Konnichiwa minasan, welcome back to Anton in Japan and to Renovation in Tokyo. In this video we're gonna talk about something that hasn't been covered that much on social media. Airbnb and short-term rentals in Japan. As you probably know, Japan has 10 million vacant homes. Some of them are for free, most of them in the countryside, right? But what does it take to turn one of these vacant properties into a short-term rental? Whether you want to live in it part-time, maybe you want that as a side business, it's not as easy as you think. And in this video, I will share the 5 most crucial steps to understand if your property is even viable to rent out as an Airbnb, a short-term rental. I'll do this by showing it with some real-life example of our ongoing renovation in Wakabayashi Park House. Please stay tuned till the end. I hope you learn a lot, because it's not as easy as you think, turning one of these neglected properties, renovating it, and then rent it out as a short-term rental. Japan, my home since 2018, the same year Airbnb laws were radically changed. Practically overnight, nearly 90% of vacation rentals disappeared, leaving hosts scrambling. Less than 2 years later, a global pandemic hit, forcing even more short-term rentals to shut down. And despite all this, a tourist boom and countless cheap real estate listings makes this country even more enticing than ever. So you might be wondering, how do you even get a license to run a short-term rental in Japan? And can you even rent an apartment and legally list it on Airbnb? That's exactly what we're going to cover in this video, and stick around, because navigating Japan's rules can be tricky, but it's definitely not impossible. Let's dive in. So before purchasing your house, you gotta make sure that you can actually run a short-term rental through the house that you're about to buy. It really depends on where in Tokyo or where in Japan you are. Some areas, they rarely allow Airbnbs, and the kuyakusho, the municipality or the brokers, they're not really that well read up on Airbnbs. It's a pretty new thing in Japan. As you probably know, Japanese rules can be very strict, and if they don't know the answer, they usually give you a very vague answer. So make sure that you actually can run an Airbnb. No matter how tempting it might sound, without a proper minpaku, shukubo or ryokan hotel license, you can't legally list your house on Airbnb or any other short-term rental platform in Japan. And if you're thinking of buying an apartment just to rent it out, 99% of management companies will shut you down. Yes, there are people who manage to do it, like my friend here, Yuta-san, who rents, renovates and lists his units on Airbnb. Yuta is a genius. If you want to see what's possible, check out his listings below. But without Japanese skills, this might be a little bit tricky. The best way to run an Airbnb in Japan is to buy a house in a prime location that's zoned for short-term rentals. And that's exactly what we're doing at Japandi Houses. By owning the right property, you can sidestep all those rental restrictions and focus on creating an amazing guest experience. Congratulations, you bought the house. What about now? You're probably about to do something that I've been doing here for the past 5 months, starting to renovate the house. Next step is to renovate the house, right? To your liking. And here we're using a lot of recycled material, and we're building Japandi Houses, a mix between Japanese and Scandinavian design. On top of this, if you choose a good area, your eventual Airbnb will probably be a little bit more popular. But with that said, there's also tons of beautiful, undiscovered places in Japan. And tourism is set to boom. By 2030, there's gonna be 60 million tourists visiting Japan. That's the goal from the Japanese government. So I even think that buying or opening up cool Airbnbs in the countryside with some beautiful views of Mount Fuji. The coastal line in Chiba is another place I love. I also think that these places have an immense upside. And when the renovation is done, you gotta apply for permits. And that's the hard part. let me talk a little bit about it. This turned out so beautiful. We just sanded it last week, 320, and then a Libos Kunos, an organic kind of oil. Another favorite with this house are these beautiful Japanese tajimi tiles and this oak kitchen. And then we also have a 6-meter ceiling height up here as well. Pretty cool, I would say. But we've spent a lot of time here. So what's the next step in opening an Airbnb? It's not as easy as you would think it is. And the hardest part is to pass number 3 and number 4. The fire department test and also the municipality test. So before we go into the municipality, because they will come here physically in most cases, let's talk about the fire department, because they're gonna come here and they're gonna demand many different papers. So let's talk about it. The fire department will come to inspect your property to ensure it meets all regulations. In many areas, they'll literally bike over, walk through your home and double check everything. So I like to greet them with cookies and coffee to make them feel welcome. If your house is more than 2 stories, you may need a fire-resistant entrance door. And keep in mind, this final inspection happens after tons of paperwork, printed floor plans, and careful guidance on where to place fire extinguishers and alarms. My advice? Ask questions, and if you have the budget for it, hire a gyosei shoshi, a licensed administrative scrivener, to handle all the paperwork for you. It'll save you time and a lot of headaches. So it might be a little bit of a pain in the ass to get these licenses, but there are 4 things I think you should have in mind for the fire inspection before you're opening up your Airbnb. Whoop. Well, number 1 would be to not have any flammable carpets or curtains. They will check this, and they will check every little piece of rug or something that you're buying for this boka shito that it says, like a CE mark that's for like the flames that has a crossover. So they check that. So don't buy anything from China. Don't buy anything cheap, and just buy things that you can buy in Japan. Everything that you buy at Nitori, Akiya, or any kind of home center in Japan usually have this mark on it. They will check everything, and if you don't have it, they're not gonna let you pass the inspection. So first, boka for all the textiles. Number 2, when it comes to fire department, is kitchen. Having a gas countertop, like sometimes it can be really mendokusai and they demand you to lock it. And the owner or the management company needs to physically come here and unlock it every time you're supposed to use a gas one. Here we're going for a Swedish countertop. Not a Swedish countertop, but a Swedish range hood, like a stove. Electrolux, you probably know that brand. We only have 2 Futakuchi. Usually in Japan they have 1 or 3, so this is a very Swedish looking oak kitchen. But number 2 is kitchen-wise. I've got some complaints from the fire department before in previous houses. The range hood cover has been too close to neighboring wood for some reason. Like Swedish kitchens usually have cabinets in wood touching the range hood cover. In Japan, it needed to be 10 centimeters away from any neighboring wood for fire reasons. Number 3, hijoto or yudoto, so emergency exits. In this particular house, we didn't need the signs on top of the door. In Nakano House, Sangenja House, my other Japandi houses, we needed that. But right here, we have an emergency light, a yudoto. So if the electricity goes out, this will light up the staircase. So if you would be sleeping in this cool bed and the power would go off, you would still understand that that's the exit. Look at this bed frame though. Super cool. Like this is actually based on Japanese old carpentry, you know, when they join it together. This whole bed frame, we could assemble it without a single screw. I'll keep using this brand. It's from a Japanese brand called GUGU, and they sell dog beds and stuff. But this bed alone, it's really cool, sturdy, solid wood, and I think this kind of stain fits really good with old Japanese rooms. The 4th one is probably the most important thing when it comes to fires. What is it? 3, 2, 1. Fire alarms. And one mistake like you can hire people to do all these things. I've done it all on my own sometimes before, but I wouldn't recommend you to doing it. This is Panasonic fire alarms, and you need different ones depending on the house. So just consult with the fire department what you need. I bought wrong many times. One of these is like 140 bucks or something. So they're a little bit more expensive than like a normal fire alarm for a jutakuyo, for like normal housing. So this is actually a hotel. We're getting the ryokan license here. So you need these ones, and they're all gonna be connected, but they look all the same. There are 5 of them, but there's actually 3 different. One of them is oyakata, so like the main. And then we have one of them is for heat that we're gonna put in the kitchen, and then we have 3 of them for smoke. But they're all gonna be connected, and if you buy wrong from the beginning, from the get-go, you've lost a lot of money. So the fire department, they actually require you to send in sketches for each of the things that you install. The yudoto, the hijoto, the fire alarms, and also for the fire extinguisher. In this case, they also required me to have one of these beautiful signs. Shokaki, fire extinguisher. That's the Japanese word for it. Now let's talk about what the municipality, the hokenjo, will tell you. The ryokan or minpaku license is issued by the hokenjo. That's the local health department. And they'll inspect more than just your check-in methods and how you communicate with guests. They also look at where and how you store your linens, your trash disposal practices, and overall hygiene standards. You might need to show that you have proper ventilation, a solid cleaning schedule, and even a plan for guest record keeping. Make sure you're ready for a thorough inspection so you can breeze through the process and get that license approved. If you don't have these people coming over, you are not even getting a license number. And without this license number, you cannot list your accommodation on Airbnb, Booking.com, VRBO, or any other of these short-term rentals. This law came into place in 2018, and it made more than 90% of Airbnbs closing down because most of them were operating illegally. Getting the license is through the municipality, through the hokenjo, the public health center. They're coming here and they're checking check-in procedures, if you have a security cam on the property. And in this case, it really depends on where in Japan you are. In Setagaya, right where we are right now, they're checking some pretty weird stuff. Let me show you what they're checking in my house right here. Hello! So what Setagaya-ku is checking here is whether or not you have a security cam. But they're checking if you can see what's going on at your property. So number 1, security cam. Number 2 is a pretty weird one, and it's happening right next to our beautiful Japanese toilets. So you know that Japanese toilets are world class. They usually have the sink on top of it, but here we're required to have a separate sink right next to the toilet. So you see, it's not really connected, and it has an ugly brown pipe that we've got to cover somehow. But if we don't have that one, it doesn't even need to be hot water. So cold water is totally fine, but you have to have a sink that's disconnected from the toilet. The third thing that they're checking is whether or not you have hot water or not. We don't have it right just yet, but we will get it in about a week or 2, and they're coming here in, when will that be? In about 3 weeks. And then after that, we are ready to list our house on Airbnb and Booking.com and our own private websites, japandihouses.com. Listen to this. I love these switches, look at it. We ordered custom stainless steel plates for the switches. And also this, well, it's really dirty now from all the sanding, but this is from Duravi. It's a used one from a Japanese showroom, but it's gonna look crazy good. Vanities here in Japan doesn't look that good generally, unless you spend a lot of money. And this one, we got it for cheap. It's really heavy and it looks great. So the zoning is right. You bought the right house. You renovated it. You got the approval from the fire department, from the hokenjo, from the public health department, hokenjo. What do you do next? You have to style it for Airbnb and you have to take beautiful pictures. How do you do this? You have the client, you have the guest in mind. I usually create spaces that I would love to live in. Space with a lot of natural light, a lot of natural wood. A lot of Japanese houses are usually very crammed, no windows and no feeling of home. And I'm trying to create a home by bringing my Scandinavian upbringing together with the Japanese aspects. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anton in Japan. This is Wakabayashi Park House, about 3 weeks before finalizing this beautiful Japandi style house. If you want to come and stay, it's gonna look nicer than this, I promise you that. If you want to come and stay, there are links down below. If you're thinking about buying and renovating a house in Japan, Free Houses in Japan, my best-selling book about buying and renovating Akiyas in Japan. It's available on Amazon. We also have Akiya Masterclass, a 10-hour comprehensive course, interviews with architects, real estate agents, Akiya investors, Akiya investor communities. We have Ananya as a fantastic guest. And some of the scenes we're actually sitting right in the middle of Wakabayashi Park House with some rolling cameras around. It's a really cool series. And if you've learned a lot in this video, from this video, you'll definitely learn a lot from there. Wakabayashi Park House, I'm Anton in Japan, and I still have a little bit of coffee left.